Adrian Volkov learned the first rule of trust at a long wooden table in a candlelit restaurant he could barely afford. He was 27, newly promoted, still carrying the hunger of someone who had spent most of his life proving he belonged in rooms that were not built for him. Around him sat colleagues who laughed easily, glasses clinking, shoulders relaxed. One of them, Marcus Hale, leaned close, poured Adrian more wine, slapped him on the back, and told him how proud he was. "You earned this," Marcus said, smiling wide. Adrian felt something warm settle in his chest. Belonging. Safety. The sense that he had finally arrived. Marcus had been there from the beginning. He gave advice. He listened when Adrian doubted himself. He defended him in meetings. When Adrian hesitated, Marcus encouraged. When Adrian succeeded, Marcus applauded the loudest. They spoke often about loyalty, about how rare it was in a world full of climbers. Adrian believed him because he wanted to, because believing felt easier than questioning. The unraveling did not begin with shouting or confrontation. It began quietly. A missed invitation. A strange look during a meeting. A comment framed as concern. "Adrian's been under a lot of pressure lately," Marcus said once, smiling, just loud enough for others to hear. "I hope he's not burning himself out." Adrian laughed it off. He told himself it meant care, but the tone lingered. Weeks later, Adrian lost a project he had built from the ground up. The explanation was vague. Leadership wanted a different direction. A month after that, Marcus stepped into a role Adrian had been promised. The congratulations came fast. The room applauded. Marcus hugged him and whispered, "I wish it had been you." And in that moment, as the applause echoed, Adrian finally saw it. The smile did not reach Marcus's eyes. It never had. That night, Adrian replayed years of conversations in his head. The praise, the advice, the warnings disguised as concern, the access he had given so freely. He realized something devastating. The knife had never been hidden. It had simply been wrapped in familiarity. And as he sat alone, staring at the city lights below his window, one question burned louder than the rest. How many times had he ignored the truth because seeing it would have cost him comfort? We like to believe danger announces itself, that threats look hostile, that betrayal arrives screaming. But human psychology doesn't work that way. We are wired to defend against strangers, not insiders. Evolution taught us to fear the unknown, the outsider, the predator we can see. What it did not prepare us for is the enemy who eats with us, laughs with us, learns our weaknesses, and waits. This is why betrayal feels so disorienting. It violates the rules your nervous system lives by. You didn't fail because you were stupid. You failed because you were human. Trust is not a moral weakness. It is a survival mechanism. But in a competitive world, that same mechanism can be exploited by people who view relationships not as bonds, but as leverage. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, not because he was cynical, but because he was observant. He studied power the way an engineer studies stress fractures. Where does pressure build? Where does structure fail? His conclusions were uncomfortable because they challenged the fantasy that goodwill governs human behavior. He didn't argue that everyone is malicious. He argued that self-interest is constant, and anyone who ignores that does so at their own expense. The fake friend is not driven by hatred. Hatred is loud. Hatred is emotional. The fake friend is driven by calculation, by comparison, by the quiet arithmetic of ego. Your success alters the equation. Your visibility changes the hierarchy. And for someone who measures their worth relative to others, your rise feels like their fall. Psychologists call this relative deprivation. We don't suffer because we lack something. We suffer because someone close to us has more. The closer they are, the sharper the pain. That's why strangers rarely envy you. They don't compare themselves to you. Friends do. Peers do. The people who share your starting line feel every step you take ahead as a threat. This is where morality fails as a lens. When betrayal happens, people ask, why would they do this to me after everything I did for them? That question assumes gratitude governs behavior. It doesn't. Necessity does. In environments where status, security, or identity are scarce, people will sacrifice loyalty without hesitation. Not because they are evil, but because they feel cornered. If you want to survive this reality, you must stop thinking in terms of good people and bad people. That framework blinds you. Instead, think in terms of incentives and pressures. What does this person gain if I fail? What do they lose if I succeed? These questions feel cold, but they are clarifying. They remove illusion. Halfway through this, if you're recognizing faces from your own life, pause for a second and like the video. Not for the algorithm, but as a marker. A signal that you are choosing awareness over comfort. That choice matters more than you think. There are patterns to hidden hostility. Machiavelli saw them. Modern psychology confirms them. Fake friends do not all look the same, but they fall into recognizable structures. Once you see the structure, the mask loses power. The first is the flatterer, excessive agreement, constant praise, support that feels good but teaches nothing. Flattery works because it bypasses logic and feeds identity. It tells you who you want to be, not who you are. A real ally risks your displeasure to protect your blind spots. A flatterer protects your ego to weaken your judgment. They don't want you sharp. They want you comfortable. Comfortable people are easy to steer. The second is the dependent, the perpetual crisis. They bond through chaos. You become their anchor, their solver, their emotional infrastructure. It feels meaningful because you feel needed. But watch what happens when roles reverse. When you need support, they disappear or minimize your pain. Their loyalty is not to you, it's to the dynamic. You are valuable only as long as you are useful. The third is the whisperer. This is the most dangerous. They operate through suggestion, implication, tone. They never attack directly. They seed doubt in others while maintaining plausible innocence. I'm just concerned. I didn't mean it that way. Reputation is not destroyed in explosions. It erodes through repetition. One raised eyebrow, one subtle comment. Over time, perception shifts. You cannot fight what you cannot name. Awareness is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. And once you recognize the pattern, the goal is not confrontation. Confrontation satisfies emotion, not strategy. It gives your opponent information. It reveals your sensitivity. Power does not react loudly, it adjusts quietly. One of the most effective ways to expose false loyalty is not through suffering, but through success. Share good news and observe. Genuine friends expand with your growth. Fake friends contract. The reaction is brief, often less than a second. A pause, a forced smile, a qualifying comment. Your nervous system will notice before your mind explains it away. Trust that signal. Another method is withdrawal of access. Reduce information. Become vague. People who value you will respect privacy. People who use you will push. They need data. They need leverage. When the supply stops, agitation begins. That agitation reveals intent. The simplest test is refusal. A small no. Nothing dramatic. Just a boundary. Healthy relationships absorb boundaries. Transactional ones collapse under them. Guilt, pressure, passive aggression. These are not emotional reactions. They are entitlement exposed. Once you see clearly, the hardest part begins. Acceptance. Not rage, not sadness. Acceptance. This person is not who you thought they were. That doesn't make you foolish. It makes you informed. And information changes the game. The mistake most people make here is overcorrecting, cutting off abruptly, public confrontations, emotional speeches. This feels empowering but creates chaos. Chaos benefits manipulators. They thrive in noise. Machiavelli favored quiet exits, reduced dependency, emotional neutrality, the gradual shift from intimacy to distance without drama. This is where discipline matters. You must detach without bitterness. Indifference is not coldness, it is control. When someone can no longer provoke emotion from you, they lose influence. You become boring to them, and boring is invisible. Keep proximity when necessary, but remove vulnerability. Smile but share nothing of value. Let them speak. Observe. Information asymmetry is power. The less they know about you, the fewer angles they have. And then there is the most uncomfortable truth. Fake friends are not random. They attach where there is access, where there is unguarded ego, where there is a hunger to be liked, needed, validated. Parasites do not choose healthy hosts. This does not mean blame. It means responsibility. When you no longer need external validation, flattery loses its grip. When you no longer define your worth through saving others, dependency loses appeal. When you are grounded internally, whispers cannot destabilize you. Adrian eventually understood this. He didn't confront Marcus. He didn't expose him. He adjusted. He stopped sharing plans. He built alliances quietly. He strengthened his position without announcement. Months later, when another opportunity came, Marcus had no access, no leverage, no role to play. The power dynamic had shifted without a word being spoken. The cost was innocence. The gain was clarity. Adrian didn't become cruel. He became precise. He learned that trust is not given wholesale. It is earned through time, pressure, and alignment of incentives. Machiavelli was not teaching people to be heartless. He was teaching them to be realistic. Compassion without awareness is self-destruction. Awareness without compassion is isolation. The balance is rare, but it is where strength lives. The world is not divided into wolves and sheep. It is divided into observers and the observed, those who see patterns and those who deny them. You don't need to harden your heart. You need to sharpen your perception. Because the most dangerous blade is not the one raised in anger. It is the one concealed by familiarity. And once you learn to see it, once you stop confusing comfort with safety, you step into a different way of moving through the world. So ask yourself this honestly, without fear or fantasy. Who has access to you that has not earned it? And what would change if you stopped confusing proximity with loyalty and started building your life on evidence instead of hope?